We want to turn back now to the healthcare battle on Capitol Hill, where President Obama, as you saw if you were with us a few minutes ago, has just arrived. He is meeting with House and Senate Democrats in an effort to save his signature healthcare law. Vice President-elect Mike Pence has also arrived on the Hill. He is meeting with House Republicans to discuss how to get rid of the law. President-elect Donald Trump weighed in on the debate this morning, tweeting, quote, "Republicans must be careful in that the Dems own the failed Obamacare disaster with its poor coverage and massive premium increases, like the 116% hike in Arizona. Also, deductibles are so high that it is practically useless. Don't let the Schumer clowns out of this web." Meanwhile, here is what Senator Schumer has had to say about the law's future.
The president-elect has said that there are several parts of the Affordable Care Act he favors. We'll hold him accountable to that. The ACA extended affordable health care to 30 million Americans. We ask the president-elect, if you repeal the ACA, what are you going to do to protect these 30 million people? It is not acceptable to repeal the law, throw our health care system into chaos, and then leave the hard work for another day. Mr. President-elect, what is your plan to make sure all Americans can get affordable health care?
Molly Hooper is a Capitol Hill reporter for The Hill, and she joins me now from Washington. Molly, we've heard from both sides. I would say first shots fired, but it feels like it's the 50th shots fired when it comes to this. Just your reaction to the he said and he said.
Well, it's the he said, been going on since Obamacare was even proposed. And that's what is, that's what's going to be continuing. In fact, President Obama is meeting with the Democrats right now up in Capitol Hill. Basically, they feel very hamstrung, and they are hamstrung legislatively when it comes to what they can do to prevent the Republicans from moving a repeal bill and eventually a replace bill. However, one thing that the president does have is he has the bully pulpit for the next 2 weeks. But even after he leaves office, he intends to be involved. He said this in a radio address on Saturday. He tends to be involved in fighting for the causes that, he's championed as president, namely Obamacare. And so this meeting today with House and Senate Democrats will be a place where he can discuss those plans and how the Democrats can take it to their constituents and make sure that they gin up a lot of, opposition to this GOP proposal to repeal the Obamacare.
And Donald Trump had a warning for Republicans, perhaps a different sort of warning, wanting to have Obama and the Democrats own this and the disaster, as he called it. But what are the dangers for Republicans as they look forward to repealing, because they talk about repeal and replace, and we know that that's a long process?
Well, actually, it is a long process, and on the one hand, it's a long process. On the other hand, they want to keep it a long process because Schumer said it, about 30 million people have coverage under the Affordable Care Act, and simply repealing the employer mandate, the individual mandate, these onerous items to Republicans, what do you do in the interim to the people who lose their health care and don't have it through their employers? So the problem for Republicans is, and this is something they are discussing with Mike Pence today across the Capitol, what do you do when you repeal the bill? When does that repeal take place? The Republicans in the Senate moved a measure. They introduced a measure to fast track and to make it easier to pass a repeal bill. But that repeal bill hasn't been written yet. In fact, this reconciliation measure introduced in the Senate says that the Republicans on the appropriate committees must come up with a repeal bill by the 27th of January. That said, they could repeal the law in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in order to buy time to come up with a better replacement option.
We also have seen Donald Trump tweeting in the past 24 hours. I guess we can say it's been a busy Twitter time for him about intelligence officials. Once again, he tweeted about delaying a briefing that Jan Crawford reported earlier. The intelligence officials say was not delayed, that it was always scheduled for Friday. And then also Julian Assange's assessment that a 14-year-old could have hacked John Podesta. What's the impact of the future president continuing to publicly doubt the intelligence community on Twitter?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, he's already nominated a CIA director, or at least he intends to nominate Mike Pompeo as the next CIA director. It's unclear what's going to happen with the intelligence agencies. Donald Trump is representing a lot of skepticism that Americans across this country have with the intelligence agencies, and Donald Trump brought it up himself. He said, where were those weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? An assessment that the CIA took to then President George W. Bush. And so even some people on Capitol Hill are skeptical about the assessment that Russia, was hacking into these emails. And so it's unclear how this is going to play out. But once he has that briefing, he'll have a better idea as to Russia's role in it. As for Julian Assange, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, was asked about that this morning on the Hugh Hewitt Show. And really, he said, Julian Assange has been in bed with the Russians for years. And so it wasn't that he was disagreeing with what Trump has said. It's just that he didn't put a lot of stock in Julian Assange's, protests, that this was not, that he did not get these emails from the Russian government.
Right, and which we have been hearing
exactly.
since Assange has spoken out. More tweets from the president-elect also voicing about domestic policy concerns. And yesterday, against General Motors, speaking about Ford today, he actually praised Ford Motor Company, gave himself, it seemed like, possibly a little credit for Ford scrapping those plans for a plant in Mexico. It's another. We have to wait and see, probably, but how much credit can he take right now for that decision, do you think?
I don't know if it's necessarily that he can take a lot of credit for it, but when you look at what these companies are saying, like Ford, in fact, I think the head of Ford was on CBSN yesterday, talking about that it's not necessarily what Trump has said thus far. It's the climate, the business climate, and the regulatory changes
right.
that he's promising to make when he takes over the White House, and Republicans are in control of both chambers, that look, promising for big companies in this country who want to keep jobs in America. But it's unclear. But hey, Trump wants to take the credit. He's taking it.
How much time does that buy him? When that idea that obviously companies are looking forward and saying, if we get these tax breaks, it's better for us here. But how much time does he get with that if those policies aren't enacted?
Well, that's the thing. Paul Ryan, Republicans on the Hill, they want to make tax reform, including corporate tax reform, a big push in the first 100, 200 days to make sure that does get enacted. It's been stymied for so long. They want to lower the corporate rate, and that's one thing that corporations are giving this Trump administration, maybe 100, 200 days. But keep in mind that also part of this is Trump's promise to change trade rules and
right.
or at least to renegotiate trade deals with other countries, and that would make it very prohibitive for American companies that make their products outside this country to then re-import them to sell in America. So it's weighing the carrots and the sticks, and it's unclear how many carrots Congress can put out there and
right.
how many sticks President-elect Trump will be able to thwack around.
I feel like I've asked you to get into President-elect Trump's head and Congress's head this morning. Now let me get inside your head.
Okay.
A general news conference promised on January 11th from Donald Trump. So if it was held today, you have one question to ask him. What would it be?
Oh my gosh! See, that's a good that's a good question. That's a good question. I want to know how much legislating he's actually going to do, or how much he's going to actually work with Congress versus how much Mike Pence is going to be doing all the work with Congress. Who's going to be meeting with members in the House and the Senate the most, and how heavily will he rely on Speaker Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell to move an agenda that he sets out? Will he back it?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. Maybe if you got on Twitter and just posed it as an anonymous person, we might get a faster response to that question. That's for certain right now.
Exactly.
The Hill's Molly Hooper. Molly, thank you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.